welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. I have just seen The Lost City, which is the latest adventure movie. We've seen a little bit of a glut of adventure movies. Maybe it's, who knows what it is that's making this all of a sudden come back into vogue. Maybe it's, they announced Jungle Cruise, and then everyone was like, hey, wait a minute, we can do that too. And then you get a bunch of them. So now we had Uncharted from Sony, which was not great. Then there was, what was the other one? Lost City and Jungle Cruise. Yeah, I guess that's three. But still, that's three that we've had, a long time. And the treasure hunting, what's it called? The treasure hunting subgenre has been kind of a Hollywood mainstay for a very long time, where it's like, going back, it's like, what's it called? The African Queen, Treasure of Sierra Madre. Like, these are all movies that have, been a thing for a very long time, because it's, it's a pretty simple concept. It's, people are going out. They're going to look for this thing that has been a thing for a very long time. And they want it. Other people also want it. They want it because it's valuable. It's a very simple motivation and a simple story to tell. So it's been done forever. I think that to an extent, there's kind of been this moving away from it in recent history, because you can't really do, I think that's part of it. It's like, this idea that the, we have satellite, and we can see the world, and a lot of the things that go into treasure hunting, it's like, well, how can you, it's an island. Like, we can see the island from space. Like, we know the island exists. So it's one of those things where it's like, you look at it and you go, this is, like, we can't really do this the way we used to anymore because of how wide-ranging things are. And the thing is, it's like, look, we don't need to sit here and reinvent the wheel with every movie we go and see in theaters. If I go to a theater to watch, Fast and the Furious, and this is my example every time, like, does the movie give me over-the-top action? Does the movie give me moderately attractive women shaking their ass? Does the movie give me fast cars souped up to look ridiculous? If the answer is yes, then this Fast and the Furious movie that I've seen has done its job. Like, if I'm going to see a superhero movie, do I see the superhero? Does the superhero punch a supervillain? Like, if yes, this movie has done its job. Not every movie needs to be a pondering on the human condition. Not every movie needs to be this deep and all of that. I mean, and that's not to say that The Lost City doesn't have that. The Lost City definitely does have this, because it is a story of loss. At the end of the day, The Lost City is a story of loss. It is a story of a woman who is coming to terms with the death of her husband and coming through the other side of the feeling of depression and that comes along with grief. And that's what this story is. You're watching a woman process her grief. And it works. It's a comedic take, and it is a comedy all the way through. And Channing Tatum's great, and Sandra Bullock's great, and in his very small role, Brad Pitt's great, and Divine Joy, I forgot her last name, she's great. Patty Harrison's great. Daniel Radcliffe has a few really good jokes in the movie, and it's just very well done. And I think that if we're going to sit here and we're going to, micromanage the movie and be like, oh, well, what's it doing that's different from other movies? It's like, well, it doesn't have to do anything different. It just has to be the best version of this movie that it can be. Like, not everything has to be different. Formulas exist for a reason. Like, I can go into Barnes & Noble right now and pick up a cookbook, and there will be a in that cookbook, I mean, let's use a dessert cookbook, because not everyone's going to have a recipe for dessert. But if I pick up a cookbook that has a cake in it, and I give that cake and that recipe to a bunch of different people, some will turn out better than others. Like, that's just the way it is. However, most people will have a passable cake at the end of it. Yeah, a few of them will end up shitty, but they use shitty ingredients or they didn't follow the directions properly. But the majority of the cakes that come out will be good to great, depending on, how well the instructions are followed. Or if someone has flair to add to it, that will do it. Like, that's, like, whenever I hear someone complain about something being too formulaic, I'm like, well, too formulaic is not a complaint. It's, you can be too formulaic without doing anything new. That's a valid complaint. To say that, to say that a show is, what's the one I'm looking for here? Like, to say that a show is inherently, or a movie is inherently bad because it follows a formula is to say that, like, it's just a very closed-minded way of looking at what you're looking at. And it's a way to easily dismiss certain genres entirely. Because, I mean, look, we can't sit here and say that, like that's the thing. It's like, you never sit here and look at people being like, oh, well, like, Star Wars wasn't too formulaic in the 70s, and the reason for that is people were like, oh, well, it built the formula. That's not true, because The Hero with a Thousand Faces came out in the 60s, and it didn't, it just laid out the theory. It didn't, it didn't reinvent anything. It was just, here is what we see as kind of the monomyth and the belief of what myth happens. So to say that it's used in a dismissive way a lot of times. Do I think that this movie could have been better? Well, yeah. I mean, there are definitely things that could have been improved on. I think that there's a definite sound mixing issue, and I'm starting to think it's just the theater I go to, because I don't see anyone else complaining about this issue, but there were times where Channing Tatum was a little hard to hear. I didn't see any complaints about that from any other, anything else online, so it doesn't mean that it's not accurate, but it does imply to me that it was an issue with my theater. It is there were times where the sets look a little wonky, and it could be green. Like, I'm not trained enough to tell green screen from regular, and it's like, to either way, there were points in the third act where it's like, okay, that's not Rock, because Rock doesn't move that way, like, during an earthquake. It's kind of silly, and it's just things like that are small, and just like, oh, well, no one's gonna really nitpick on that except for me, so, it's just that kind of thing. And there was one other thing that I found a little weird. I forgot what it was. I mean, there's definitely things you can cut from the movie, but it's a romantic comedy, so if you were to make the movie into an adventure, there are things you could definitely cut. Like, I would say the scene with Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum dancing, you can probably cut, and you can do, like, there's a way to exposit the information in that scene without having a 2 to 3 minute dance, And it's not like an intricate dance number like a musical or like Clerks 2 or something. It's like, it's just the two of them slow dancing, and it's like, it's kind of like shorthand to have them fall in love. I understand that, but you probably could have done without that. And again, you can cut all you want, but, would it affect the tone of the movie? Probably. What else was there? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, that's the thing. It's like, I'm watching the movie, and it's like, there's nothing about it that I would say is bad. Like, I think that there are people who, like, want to act like they're too cool to like romantic comedies, or comedies in general. Like, I know I was like that for a while, like, where I was like, oh, it's a comedy? People like this? Fuck that. I will not like this movie if too many people like it. Like, I was adamantly against, like, Fast and Furious, and there are still movies that are like, I don't like, but I'm not gonna sit here and be like, what are you, a sheep for liking that bullshit? Like, no, it's not fair, because everyone has different tastes, and there's nothing about this movie that is aggressively bad. And if you're looking for a movie to go out on date night and like, hey, we're gonna, go and see a movie, let's go do, see this. And the thing is, too, it's not like La La Land, which I also saw in a theater by myself, on Valentine's Day, no less, but it's not like La La Land, where you see that movie and it is inherently a romance. Like, this is an adventure movie, first and foremost. An adventure comedy with the romantic comedy kind of thrown in, kind of, like, as not like an afterthought, but kind of added in. added to taste. And the thing is, it also functions well enough as an adventure movie that it's like, if someone needs a palate cleanser before going to see Morbius next week, or going to see, Fantastic Beasts in a few weeks, or anything, or you want to just clear out after that fucking 3-hour drear that was the Batman, which is not a bad thing. I love the Batman, but it's a dreary-ass movie. Like, it is not an uplifting story. Like, when the pinnacle of good feeling in your movie is, but for me it was different, because for me I had called that Hush was going to be the bad guy. So for me, the whole sequence where he's giving the Gossip Girl story about the Waynes, and he's talking about Tommy Elliott, I was like, yes, the whole time. But for most other people, the best joke in the movie is Colin Farrell, like when they catch him and he's correcting them on pronoun use in Spanish, and he's like, "No hablo español, fellows," like that. Like, that's probably the best, moment in the movie, comedic or otherwise. And it's like, if you need to have a palate cleanser after that is totally understandable. And I think that this is the movie to do it with, because it's light, it's airy, it's got very little substance to it, and that's not a bad thing. Like, I think that's the thing we kind of got to sit here and kind of reckon with, like, is that just because it doesn't have substance to it doesn't mean it's not good. And it's not the same thing as eating food that doesn't have substance to it. I use food as the analogy because that's the easiest thing to point to a formula with and be like, oh, well, you follow a formula when you're baking a cake, you follow a formula when you're making a movie, and, it's kind of like that. And complaints about formulaic, fine, say it's formulaic. But come up with a complaint that says it's, like, saying it doesn't do enough to change the formula is not enough to complain about, in my opinion. Because the problem is, like, like I said, I'm not here to watch them reinvent the wheel. I'm not here to watch a scathing indictment on humanity. I'm not here to watch, any of that. I'm here to watch a lighthearted comedy about Channing Tatum and Sandra Bullock getting lost in a jungle and having to find their way out. That's what I'm here to see. And this movie executes that. It promised that. It promised a few comedic scenes with Brad Pitt. It promised an over-the-top, comedic performance from Daniel Radcliffe. And you know what? It did all of that. What more do I want? Like, I can't even think, like, what would I want from this movie? Like, going to see this movie, what would make me want this movie more than from what I got? And I can't think of anything. I can't go and be like, oh, well, if I was doing this movie, this is what I would have done differently and done X, Y, and Z. Because it's like, it did what it set out to do. It set a goal for itself, and it accomplished that goal. What more? What do we? What more can we possibly want from something like this? And it's like, I'm not really, interested in any of that. And I think I'm underplaying how good the movie is, and being like, what more do you want from it? It makes it sound, well, it's trash, but what did you expect? It's like, no, it's like, I went in with very low expectations, because it's like, I'm not a big, it's a comedy, and again, like I said, not a huge fan of movies that are primarily comedies. But what else was there for one to expect from a movie like this? Like, going into it from the trailers and from what we saw about everything going into it. Like, I got more than I expected, because there is a little bit of depth to it, and there is enough depth for you to grab onto and feel like you're doing something. And it's like, oh, like, this is a woman who is mourning the death of her husband. That's what we're telling the story of here. I think that it's genuinely, it is a genuinely fine movie. It is the kind of thing that I'm probably not going to buy on DVD, but I may end up watching it again if it ends up on, Paramount Plus. If I need a movie, if I just want to watch the movie, it'll be on Paramount Plus probably. But it's not a movie that I would go out of my way to actively. I wouldn't go see it again in theaters. I wouldn't go buy a DVD of it just because I want to watch it again. But you know what? It's one of those movies where it's like I don't regret seeing it in the theater. Which I know saying I don't regret wasting 2 hours to see this movie is not an endorsement, but go see this movie. It is it's fun. It's just lighthearted fun. And really, I can't say any better than that. And it's like, look, if you want to see, like, everyone's having a blast being there, and it's obvious, and it's just, watch people do what they do and do it well. It's fine enough on its own. Maybe see it as matinee on the weekend. Maybe don't pay full price for it at night. But yeah, we're going to wrap up there for today. I am going to stop and get a milkshake. And then I'm going to relax the rest of the evening. So until our next episode, which will be tomorrow, I'm seeing Infinite Storm with Naomi Watts. And then after that will be Moon Knight. I'll have a spoiler-free review of the first 4 episodes of Moon Knight up on Tuesday when the review embargo lifts. And then Thursdays, weekly, we'll be doing a Moon Knight, this is what happened on Moon Knight. Kind of, you listen to the show, you know how it works. For those of you who have found the show as a result of looking for a review of The Lost City, please subscribe, because we do review a lot of stuff, a lot of movies, and occasionally we'll do video games too. But it's one of those things where it's easier to find us if you subscribe, and if there's something you like, you can just, listen to the episodes you like. So subscribe and rate us on iTunes with 5 stars, that'd be great. And until our next episode, tomorrow, have a great rest of your day.